Okay, Jeffrey. So here's something everyone's dealt with. You've got one friend who drinks espresso after dinner and then sleeps like a baby. And then someone else has a coffee at 2 in the afternoon and they're staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. Most people think that's random, but it's not, right?
No, I'd say it's actually not random at all. A huge portion that's genetic. And what's interesting is that there's actually two separate systems or two separate genes at play here. So one of those controls how long caffeine stays in your body, and the other controls how strongly your brain reacts to caffeine while it's there. So depending upon which versions of these two genes you inherit, your experience with coffee can look very, very different than the person sitting right next to you.
Got it. So, let's start with the first one, how long caffeine actually stays in the system.
Yeah, so that's actually controlled by a gene called CYP1A2. It controls about 95% of how your body breaks down caffeine. So depending upon which version of that gene you inherit, you're either a fast metabolizer or a slow metabolizer. If you're fast, then caffeine clears out of your system in roughly 4 to 6 hours. If you're slow, it can take 7 to 10, right? So that afternoon coffee for a slow metabolizer, it hits very, very differently. And you might genuinely still have all this caffeine in your system at midnight.
It kind of starts to probably explain a lot of things for a few people. And this isn't really that rare, though, is it?
No. I would say, roughly speaking, 4 of 10 people are fast metabolizers. So they've kind of been genetically gifted, quote unquote. 15% are slow, and then the rest of us fall somewhere in the middle. But here's the thing, right? So about, again, 60% of people carry at least one copy of that slow version of the gene, right? So caffeine is still hanging around a lot longer than they anticipate for these people. And so if you're in that group, you're actually the majority, you're not the exception to the rule. Right. And this is very, very well established science. Genome-wide studies with over 2 million people back this up. Like, this is one of the things we best understand about caffeine and how we process it.
Yeah. So it's really not about sleep or feeling wired. There's real health data to back this up too, is what you're saying.
Yeah, there's this landmark study in the Journal of the American Medical Association that found that slow metabolizers under 50 who had 4 more cups of coffee, right? So it's a lot of us. They had 4 times the risk of having heart attacks. In contrast, fast metabolizers drinking the same amount, a 65% reduced risk. So it's the exact same coffee, completely different outcomes, just depending upon what gene you have.
Okay, so that covers really how long caffeine sticks around, but you said there's a whole separate system here. What's that one?
Yeah, so we've really covered how the body processes caffeine. The second system is about how hard caffeine hits, right? And that gene is called ADORA2A, and it's in your brain, not your liver. So this affects adenosine receptors. And these are the receptors that caffeine actually blocks to make you feel more alert or less tired. So about a quarter of people carry a variant of this gene that makes these receptors extra sensitive to caffeine. So for them, the exact same cup of coffee that barely registers with someone else can trigger a much stronger response. Caffeine-induced anxiety, jitters, racing heart. It's like a slap in the face to your nervous system that startles you into being awake, but in a way that, it doesn't feel good, right? It feels like a shock to your nervous system.
Right.
So, one study found that people with this variant experience about 5 times more anxiety from a moderate dose of caffeine than those who don't have that variant, right? So if you're one of those people who has this really strong reaction to caffeine mentally, that could be the reason.
So this really starts to explain why people can feel caffeine so differently. And just to be clear and make sure I'm following, these are 2 completely separate things.
So yes, these are 2 completely separate things. One of these, the CYP1A2 gene, controls how long caffeine sticks around. The ADORA2A gene controls how strongly your brain reacts with caffeine when it's there. So some people have issues with one of these genes. Some people have issues with both of these genes. So if you have both, kind of picture this. You've got this midnight deadline at work. You're already stressed out because of it. You're running behind. And so really without thinking about it, you reach for a couple cups of coffee, right? You just need that energy to get going, right? So before you know it, you're not just awake all night, which is kind of what you wanted. You're feeling jittery, you're anxious, your heart's racing. You're more stressed out than you were before that coffee, not less, right? So that's that double whammy effect where caffeine can linger in your system and in your brain, and it's overreacting, every minute you're experiencing that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think a lot of people have felt these things. The question is there actually anything you can do about this, or is it just deal with it?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? So what do you do? So I think it starts with an understanding of your genetics and how you respond to coffee and caffeine. All right, so most people think that just caffeine does one thing and it leaves, but what's really happening is your liver's breaking caffeine down into several different compounds or components. The big one, about 80% of the caffeine you consume, gets converted into something called paraxanthine, or we just call it PX for short. And here's why that matters. PX is going to give you what you want from coffee, that alertness, the focus, the mental clarity. So it's largely PX is all the benefits of caffeine. But what's kind of key about this is it doesn't have a lot of the downsides.
Is it fair to say that caffeine is kind of just the delivery vehicle and PX is the part you actually want?
Yeah, at least for those people who have negative experiences with caffeine, like you do not want all that baggage that comes with caffeine, right? It's going to spike your stress hormones. It overstimulates your nervous system. It lingers in your body for hours, especially if you're one of those slow metabolizers. So you're dealing with all that while you're trying to wait for your body to kind of slowly convert it and get it out. And then if you have that extra sensitive Adora 2A gene we talked about on top of it, it's also triggering that anxiety or flight response, even before like you have even an opportunity, right, for your liver to start processing and working through that caffeine.
So the obvious advice here is just drink less coffee, right?
Yeah. I mean, for sure, right? That's like the textbook answer is just go cold turkey, cut back, switch to decaf, maybe go to green tea. And that works, right? But let's be honest about it. Like that's not really what people are going to do. About 2/3 of Americans drink coffee every single day. We're not quitting. We need the energy. We love the ritual. We're just kind of tired of the baggage, the side effects. So I think the better questions up being like, what are the alternatives out there and what can you do? And can you go straight to PX? And that's something that we've worked on at Rarebird and it's possible now. You can consume PX directly in a coffee like we make. It's found now in different energy drinks and supplements. It's showing up more and more. And, there's some real advantages that science backs up. One is that PX clears out of your body about 25% faster than caffeine. And part of the reason is that it's metabolized by multiple different enzymatic pathways, not just that single CYP1A2 gene. So there's all these different parts of the liver, now working on the paraxanthine or the PX. So if you're still a slow metabolizer of caffeine, your body has these other solutions or alternatives to process PX. The research is also beginning to point to PX delivering similar or even better cognitive benefits and alertness benefits and focus benefits relative to caffeine, all the while keeping your stress levels lower than caffeine. So, for people who are struggling with caffeine, whether it's the duration, the intensity, or both, PX provides that energy you're looking for, that focus you're looking for, without that prolonged overstimulation response.
So the bottom line to me is, your genes shape how your body handles caffeine, but they don't really have to dictate your relationship with coffee.
Yeah, I mean, I like to say like the first step again is like understanding your biology. And then whether you're a fast metabolizer, slow metabolizer, whether your brain is extra sensitive, you can kind of fine tune your choices instead of just pushing through and feeling lousy all day. All right. So for some people, regular coffee works great and they don't need to change a thing. That's fine. But for a lot of us, PX coffee or PX energy drinks become the thing that makes our mornings or days actually work again.
And let us know, does caffeine hit you more through anxiety, sleep, or both? Chances are you already know. And if you want to actually find out what your genetics say, we'll link a couple options below and you can check it out and really start to understand how your body's processing caffeine and understand what best suits you. Thank you, Jeffrey. So if this was helpful, hit the like and subscribe, drop us a comment. Thanks, folks.